Are you listening?
And up next, we have a very special treat. We are joined by the folks over at Waking Oni Games. We have Derek Fields and Chase Bethea. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you.
So, Derek, right up front, tell us a little bit about Waking Oni Games.
At its core, Waking Oni is a game studio that's focused on creating games specifically exploring the intersection of Black and Japanese culture. This tugs at the conversation of Blackness in anime and exploring games that are tugging at that conversation as well. When not making like our primary titles, some of us on the team collaborate together in various game jams and participate in other events. And so we also have some other games and projects on the side from our main titles.
Jumping over to Chase, you are kind of a composer on the video game side. We talked a little bit before we got started, but how many games are you at right now in sense of composing titles for video games?
I've composed for at least 14 different games. I've shipped about 21 games so far in my 11-year video game composing career. And I'm currently on about 7 to 8 projects, I would say.
Now, the two of you were brought to my attention because of the Stadia Makers Play Anywhere Game Jam, where you created a game called Bushido Bots.
That's right.
As I understand, this was 7 days to build a game.
Yeah, we had a bit of a short period. So the way that we came together for Bushido Bots, basically, I was approached with the event and went to some friends and colleagues and said, this is our opportunity to remake our favorite game, Bushido Blade. Will you join me? And that quickly involved me reaching out to Chase and the other folks who were involved on the game.
Now, is 7 days the fastest you've ever made a game before?
No. I would say there's been smaller, like fun little projects that have happened over a weekend. The time period is certainly indicative of the size of the game, what comes out of it. But 7 days is definitely one of the shorter ones.
And you mentioned Bushido Blade. That's a game, I'm going to get my gamer card revoked here. What platform was that for back in the day?
Bushido Blade, for those that don't know, is an incredible fighting game on the PlayStation. There is Bushido Blade 1 and 2, and I think what is most appealing about this game is when it released from Squaresoft at the time, that is now Square Enix, you took on your opponent, you selected your weapon, and there were no health bars. And so you are placed in an environment, and if you strike your opponent, they die. Or they might have like an injured limb, like their arm will be disabled. This happening during PlayStation is like, for me, it was an incredible and defining moment for fighting games. And I've always kind of craved that experience to be had on contemporary consoles. But I think the games that have created renditions that are inspired by Bushido Blade, I don't know, sometimes they still don't hit the same way. I think I just end up playing the old one.
Well, I gotta say, the thing that kind of stood out the most about your game was definitely the trailer that you put together, because it reminded me of that old school infomercial, Nickelodeon magazine, like, here's Bushido Bots, and the art style was kind of really cool. So is that kind of tying into the anime side of things that you're mentioning with Waking Oni?
Yeah, we poured all of those resources into the game, its aesthetic, and the trailer, which I have to say shout outs to our team member Cheska, who helped edit that trailer on such a short notice. It was so much fun, making content that's nostalgic, making content that's reminiscent of various anime shows. And so that time period that I think resonates with all of us is exactly what you were talking about: the Nickelodeon magazine, the infomercials, Cartoon Network, and all of that stuff. So yeah.
Now, Chase, jumping over to you, you composed the music for Bushido Bots. And kind of similar question, 7 days, is that the fastest you've ever had to kind of compose something for a video game?
No, one time was 4 hours.
Wow. Someone literally had the gall to come to you and be like, you've got 4 hours.
It was between, I would have to say, at least 24 hours. And to do the music specifically, it took me 4 hours to match, to fit within that time. Yeah.
As a composer, are you pulling from songs that you already have kind of in your head and you're kind of like, oh, I would love to use this somewhere? Or do you see the gameplay mechanics of like a game like Bushido Bots and immediately be like, okay, I know what I want to do here?
Yeah, it's definitely the latter. Because I've played so many games in my time for research and pleasure, I have the sense of knowing when I see or understand the design or the mechanic to be able to at least conceptualize something in my head. And all it just takes is just me to just manifest it into reality and make it happen.
Music in a video game is such a unique factor for me, because when you look at music in cinema, you're sitting in the audience, you're sitting in your chair, and you're allowing the music to take you on the journey. In video games, the music isn't really in charge. It's the one with the controller. So how do you find that balance of, how do I get the audience to feel this way or know that it's matching up with the actions of what the player's doing?
Yeah, for me, it's about perspective. And I'm a musician, I'm a composer, but I was a player first. So I understand where the end point is, and I put myself there in the beginning so that I'm along the way until the end point of where it's going to be received. So I'm doing the pre-design, I'm thinking about the music, I'm thinking about how I can keep it engaging. I'm understanding that it has to be oral ear candy. I'm also understanding that it's not just about the music, it's an entire art collaborative form. There's design, there's programming, there's story, anything that also is happening in that respect, and using different game audio tools to enhance beyond what we have already done with game audio in the past and bringing it forward into the future. And so that's me thinking to myself, what more could I do? What more could I bring to the table for a better immersive player experience?
We saw Bushido Bots, and from what we saw in the trailer and kind of some gameplay clips, primarily looked like a multiplayer combat game back and forth. When the game launches, do you plan on expanding that by having online multiplayer? Is there going to be a campaign mode or anything like that?
When we came together to make the game, we agreed that we were just going to make kind of a conceptual demo. We don't have any plans to expand to anything larger, and so what will be released to Stadia will be a much more polished version of the Game Jam game that we created. It would be really exciting to consider, but that'll take some funding if anybody is listening.
That kind of leads into the next question, because when you were developing it, I never really got a good answer from anybody. Were you just developing games like on PC, or did they actually give you instances of Stadia that you had to have it running in the cloud?
Right. So we, during the original Game Jam, only produced the Game Jam game on PC. Now that we signed on with Stadia for actually, putting the game on the platform, they did provide us with some developer kits, which were, came in the form of controllers and a computer tower that is handed over to our programmer to be able to test things on the platform.
Gotcha. So development is still actively going on bringing the game to the platform.
That's right.
Any way I can kind of maybe squeeze a little bit of a release window or anything like that from you on that end?
Release window is definitely at the end of this year, so you can expect it to come around then.
Now, the other side of this is Waking Oni has a game that's releasing a little sooner than that, in the form of its Onsen Master, correct?
That's right.
Now, this looked like a game that I've never seen before. I mean, and this is just from my perspective of not being familiar really with Asian culture or anything like that, but this is a kind of a take of Overcooked, but moving it into more of a bathhouse type of environment.
That's right. So Onsen Master is a hot spring strategy game, and Overcooked is certainly among the titles that influenced us for the mechanics that you see at play with that game. Another one that's a really big inspiration to the title is the Ghibli film Spirited Away, which also has a large role in bathhouses or hot springs throughout its story. It's for Onsen Master. We had been working on that title for part-time actually, for about 6 years. And so we established a connection with the publisher Whitethorn Games, and then are going to be releasing it this summer. Yeah,
Whitethorn seems to be doing a lot of good work on the indie scene. I know they've worked with like the folks at Lake and a few others, so it's cool to hear that you got kind of caught up with them.
Yeah. Oh, and shout outs to Lake and the other titles that have come out, because Whitethorn's publishing some cool things.
From an indie developer perspective, I'm curious, you said you're kind of doing it, you started the game part-time. What's that process like for you guys? Like, obviously, you're probably still working a full-time job during the day. At night, are you coming home and developing the game, or what's that look like?
Yeah, the experience of Onsen Master, I think that I can speak to Bushido Bots as well, and Chase, I would love to hear your thoughts too. But Onsen Master started when I actually had trouble getting entry into the games industry, and so I said, I'm just going to make a game and that's what we're going to do. And so it was certainly a rocky uphill climb that contributed to its longevity. But now the position that I'm in, so throughout the day, I'm a professor over at Northwestern, and I teach 3D modeling and game design. And balancing that with my life as an indie developer, I think is certainly a skill that took time to develop. But creating games part-time is something that I ultimately feel comfortable doing. With Bushido Bots, we were able to come together and say, okay, this is their game, this is the time, what's everybody doing, what can we achieve in that time period? And it like happened, pretty as close to perfect as it could within a week's time.
So for me, it's constantly just looking for the next thing to obviously sustain. It's running a business. So the projects, when I was the composer for Ground, which was published partially by Whitethorn as well, I was on that full time, and that was my second full time thing that I had. But I've worked many different day jobs before, from being a retail associate at Sam Ash to a type of driver for different magazines, for things like that too. And so it's just now coming around, I would have to say, in the past couple of years, where I'm doing it on my own again. It's like full time, thanks to myriad of the projects with Bushido Bots and a couple other games that of developers that, like Fancy Fish Games is developing 2 different games, and a couple other game studios that I've been approached to actually write music for. So it's been quite a journey for the past 11 years, but I think it's going to be good from here on forward.
Now, when it comes to composing, I mean, do you have a preference when it comes to instruments or anything like that? Like, if someone were to look at your entire catalog of what you've created, is there something that we can kind of pick out from every single song and be like, oh, that's Chase's specialty? No,
unfortunately not. I keep that rotating. It's definitely a Pandora's box of assortment in instruments. I mean, I've got things on my wall. A lot of people like to see the xylophone here. I've got on this side, I've got the mandolin, I've got a hand drum, I've got a little hand pan thing. I've got instruments all around the room. And even though my first instrument that I learned was the alto saxophone, I do have one of those. There's a drum underneath here, which I practice harmonica, I play piano, I learned classical and jazz piano. And so yeah, I just thought it to become a multi-instrumentalist is the best thing to do, as well as I've also took vocal lessons from my mom. So I'm really trying to be well-rounded musician, so that when I work with either musicians, if I have to contract them, or if I need to play something on my own to give a specific game the sonic identity it needs, I'm prepared and I'm well equipped to do so.
Yeah, Chase is a real genre chameleon when it comes to music. I've had the pleasure of listening to many variations, and it stands to be true that there isn't like a, oh yeah, Chase made that. It's more like a discovery of like, oh, awesome, Chase made that.
Do you have a favorite instrument that like you kind of like that's what your kind of go-to is when you kind of like to chill or anything like that?
Yeah, I think right now it's just the harmonica, because if I'm outdoors or camping with friends or wherever, I can just pull it out, and people even really enjoy it. Even the dogs enjoy it. It's pretty fascinating. They just hang out and, oh, it's like being in Breath of the Wild when they come up to you or something.
I'm extremely envious. I mean, like, I can pick at a guitar and I can hit a cue. The only reason I can play the pianos is we've written the notes on each of the keys, so like we know where to play. But I'm so envious of anybody who can be multi-instrumental. Derek, do you play any instruments?
My high school and college days were filled with some guitar moments. I spent a lot of time playing electric guitar. My favorite band during then was Lamb of God, and so I spent most of my time figuring out how to play certain tracks off of their albums. I don't know. I don't have the calloused fingers anymore, and I probably don't have the same dexterity to be able to pick it up, but I've been thinking about it. My partner would probably make fun of me if I showed up with a guitar.
I am interested though, because you mentioned Northwestern and being a professor. Do you look at students this kind of out today, and you see all the classes that there is for game development and game theory, and then you see scholarships for like esports? Do you look at that and ever think like, man, I grew up in the wrong generation?
If there's always going to be the moment in any generation, the oh, I wish I could go back and maybe like do this differently. If I spend too much time thinking about that, I'd probably say like, I wish I started game design when I was 12, the way that I hear, some other folks do that sort of thing. When I look at the resources that are available for students today and the ability to create games, instead of reflecting on like maybe how that would have impacted me differently, I think I'm more excited for what is available to them now, because now I can have conversations with, say, my stepson who is 14 and say like, oh, if you have a game idea, it's really not impossible to pursue that right away, and the resources are available to do so. I think that's going to continue to change, and I think content creation around games, around user generated content within spaces like you mentioned Crata before our call, and now we have Fortnite, which has the ability for people to create content. I think we're just going to start to see more avant-garde experiences coming from small teams, from individuals who have the interest and ability to develop things for themselves. So I can't wait to see what comes next.
Yeah, I'm curious, with both of you kind of being independent and freelancing, if you could pick one property that, like, I could write a blank check and give it to you, whether it be like Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, or anything like that, what would it be? Derek, we'll start with you.
Oh no, Tenchu.
Okay.
Tenchu Wrath of Heaven on PlayStation 2, which I hear FromSoft is considering bringing back. I would love to do that, but I don't know. I unabashedly love Star Wars. I wear Star Wars socks almost daily, so that too is something that I would probably run to the hills with if it was provided.
I do think, and I would fund this, and I'll throw this out there. Let's do a GoFundMe Star Wars Bushido Bot, where you're literally just Jedis with the lightsaber. I mean, I think there could be something there.
Listen, there's a PlayStation title, Star Wars Masters of Terrakasi, which I'm just waiting to come back in some capacity. It's Star Wars.
Exactly. That's why I love you, Derek. That's why I love you. You love me, man. You're the only one that loves this game.
It's an incredible game.
Yes, thank you. And for all the haters out there, you should be saying nothing unless you're in the FGC community.
Chase, what about you? If I had a blank check and I could get you on any franchise, what would it be?
Sign me up for Castlevania. I'm ready. I will take it up. But I want to work with Michiru Yamane. I definitely want to do the honor and the right for what the sound is, but please sign me up. I'm so enamored with that series, especially since Lords of Shadow, even though Michiru Yamane was not part of that. But please put me on with that composers where Oscar Arujo come back. Those two together, just to work with them, oh my gosh, the dream come true.
Well, again, I thank both of you for coming on the show. It was really insightful to kind of get to talk to, not only a composer, but also a developer who are kind of working on games together and kind of getting an idea of how that works. If people want to find out more about you, if they want to find more about, Waking Oni, or Chase, they want to hire you, where should they go to find that out?
Waking Oni Games, that's our handle on Twitter, and also the name of our webpage. And so that is the best place to keep track of what the studio is working on. Most welcome to follow me on Twitter if you want to hear me talk about, games like Tenchu. It could be found at Derek V Fields.
And for me, it's chasebethea.com. You can Google that. I mean, a lot of things will come up. I'm on Twitter, Facebook. I'm Gamer Composer on Instagram. If you would check out the streams I'm going to be doing behind the scenes for composing for the games on Twitch, it's twitch.tv/gamercomposer. If you're not on there, you want to still hear more of my work, chasebethea.bandcamp, and I'm on Spotify and all the other major streaming platforms.
Well, again, thank you so much for coming on the show. And to everybody who's watching, thank you again for tuning into this week's episode. My name is Bryant. This has been the Nerf Report, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Hey, thanks again for checking out our channel. If you like what you saw and you want to see more content just like it, which who wouldn't, hit the subscribe button right there. And while you're down there, hit the like button. Maybe even consider becoming a Nerf Report best friend, just like the people listed down below did. In fact, don't you want to see your name there? I know I do.